Okay guys, welcome to the first lesson of chapter 2, and in this lesson we're going to be talking about midpoint and distance. Okay, and the first one we're going to be talking about is midpoint. So what is midpoint? I got a graph here with two coordinates. Coordinate A has x1 and y1 as its coordinate, and coordinate B has x2 and y2. Okay, and our job is to find the midpoint. What I mean by the midpoint is the point that is exactly halfway in between both of those coordinates, exactly halfway, and we want to find the coordinates of this. Okay, the way we're going to do that is I'm going to break this up into a right angle triangle like so. So that's the vertical, that's the height, and this is the width of that triangle. Okay, so let's talk about how we're going to find the coordinates of the midpoint. To find the x coordinate excuse me, to find the x coordinate, we need to find the x value of the midpoint, right? Which is going to be exactly halfway between x1 and x2. That makes sense, right? If this is the overall distance, we need to get the halfway point between two coordinates, two numbers. How do we get the halfway point between two numbers? Well, to get the halfway point between any two numbers, so halfway is going to be a plus b over 2. Okay, for example, what's the halfway point between 4 and 6? We know that 5 is the halfway number, right? So to use the equation, if you do 4 plus 6 divided by 2, that's 10 over 2, which is 5. 5 is the halfway number. So to get the x coordinate, which is the middle, the x coordinate, we're going to do x1 plus x2, all that divided by 2 to get the halfway number. And that is exactly going to be our x coordinate of the midpoint, x1 plus x2 over 2, because it's the halfway between both the other two x coordinates. And for the y coordinate of the midpoint, we're going to do the exact same thing. Okay, we're going to do the exact same thing. What I'm going to do, take the first y coordinate, y1 plus y2, and divide it by 2. So the y coordinate is y1, y2 over 2. I want to get exactly in between vertically between the two coordinates. So all this gives me my midpoint formula, which is this. I already wrote it, x1 plus x2 over 2 and y1 plus y2 over 2. Okay, it's all to do with halfway coordinates, halfway vertically and halfway horizontally. Okay, so let's apply this formula now. So I got a question here. Let's say this is coordinate A, this is coordinate B, and we need to find the midpoint between both of these coordinates. So let's use the formula. If you want, what I recommend you guys doing is label it. So this is going to be x1, this is y1, this is x2, this is y2. Now we label, then we can just start solving into the equation. So it's going to be x1 is 5 plus x2 is 3 over 2. y1 is 7 plus y2 is 4 over 2. From here, just simplify this. It's going to be 8 over 2 and 11 over 2. And one of them we can simplify. It's going to be 4 and 11 over 2. Okay, so this is the midpoint of the equation. Now, the question might also ask us something like this. So they're going to give us the two original coordinates with their variable inside them. So read the question. A is this. A has coordinates A and 4. B has coordinates 3 and B. Okay, and they're saying us this time the midpoint is 5 and 8. Okay, and they're asking us to find coordinates of A and coordinates of B. So how are we going to do that? Okay, this is the method. If you think you know, by the way, have a go at it. Pause the video and have a go. But if not, watch and I'll show you now. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to ignore this exists for a second. I'm going to ignore that. Let's say the midpoint we don't know. Okay, what would be the midpoint between these two coordinates? We can find just using the formula. Okay, so using the formula, first I'm going to label. This is x1, y1, x2, y2. Okay, now using the formula between these two coordinates, the midpoint formula, I'm going to find the midpoint. So I can say midpoint is equal to x1 is a plus 3 over 2 and y1, which is 4 plus b over 2. So using the formula, I got the midpoint, right? Now this is the midpoint between these two coordinates. Now, what is the question saying the midpoint should be? The question is saying the midpoint should be 5 and 8, right? So this midpoint that we got from our equation should be the same as 5 and 8 because that's what the question is saying, right? So from here, it's really simple, guys. The x coordinate has to be the same. So pretty much a plus 3 over 2 is equal to 5, but because the x coordinates have to be the same. And the y coordinates have to be the same. So you have 4 plus b over 2 is equal to 8. From here, it's really simple. Just solve for a and b. Okay, let's do it. So you have a plus b plus 3 is equal to 10 because multiply by 2. A is equal to 10 minus 3, which is 7. So A is equal to 7. That's one job done. So next, Same thing, 4 plus b is equal to 16, b is equal to 12. So a is 7, b is 12. Okay, simple as that. So now it's time for you to have a go. So similar questions, guys. Pause the video and do them. Okay, these are the answers to the following questions. So hopefully you got them all right. Okay, I will be walking you guys through part B of the first question and part B of the second question, okay? So let me copy this down for you guys. So I'll walk you through this because it was a bit weird with some fractions, okay? So firstly, part A, so we just need to use the midpoint formula. Again, you can label if you want. You don't always have to do this if you can do it straight away. I just find it helps make it a bit more clear. So x2 and y2. So what we're going to do is say x1 plus x2 divided by 2. So the midpoint is 3 plus 6 divided by 2. And it's going to be half plus negative 512. So we have to take over the negative divided by 2. Okay, so from here we just need to simplify. So midpoint is going to be 3 plus 6 is 9. So 9 over 2. And what's negative? Okay, we can do this on the side. So half minus 5 over 2 is actually, if you add the fractions, negative 4 over 2, which is negative 2. So you're left with, on the top, it's negative 2, because this simplifies to negative 2, divided by 2. We're almost done, so we can just say it's 9 over 2 and negative 1, which is the answer. Okay, guys? Hope you got that. Now I'm also going to do the next question, part B, so pay attention. So, just make some space. All right, part B. So again, we need to use the midpoint formula. Like I said in the previous question, I showed you the example. Pretend that this midpoint doesn't exist. And what I'm going to say is find the midpoint between A and B using the formula. Okay, so the midpoint is going to be A plus 1 over 2, because x1 plus x2 divided by 2. And the y coordinate is negative 3 plus b divided by 2. Okay, so y1 plus y2 divided by 2. It's the same formula. So what are you left with? This is the midpoint we got from the equation. That should be equal to what, guys? That should be equal to 3 over 4. And that should be equal to 7. Okay, so we're equating the midpoints. Now, we can say x coordinates are the same. So it's a plus half over 2 is equal to 3 over 4. And the second equation is negative 3 plus b over 2 is equal to 7. Okay, let's solve these. So you can have a plus half, if multiplied by 2, is pretty much if you're going to have 3 over 4 multiplied by 2. Okay, I'm a big believer in cross simplifying, so make sure you can cross simplify. So what I mean by that is 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 4 twice. Okay, so what are you left with is a plus half is equal to 3 over 2. Okay, then all you need to do is subtract by half. So a is equal to 3 over 2 minus a half, which is 2 over 2, which is 1. So we can say a is equal to 1. Okay, so it's a bit of algebra, that's all. This one's easy though. You can say negative 3 plus b, if I multiply by 2, is 14. B is equal to 17. That's it. That's your answer. So a is 1, b is 17. Hope you got those right. Okay. So that's midpoint done, guys. It's really simple. Nothing too complicated here. The next thing we need to think about is distance, okay? So now I have two coordinates, x1, y1 and x2, y2 again. But this time I want to find the distance d between those two elements, okay? And to do this, I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to make a right angle triangle. Right angle triangle. Now, I'm sure you guys heard all about Pythagoras theorem. You guys know what Pythagoras theorem is. A squared plus b squared is equal to, in our case, d squared, distance squared, right? So pretty much we have the equation. If this is a and this is b, we can say a squared plus b squared is whatever our distance is squared. Okay, that's simple Pythagoras theorem because this is a right angle triangle. Okay, so now our job is to find what the hell a is and what the hell b is. Okay, so what is a and b? How do we find it? Okay, so pretty much it's really simple. We know that this is x2 because the x coordinate of b, and we know that this is x1, which is the x coordinate of a, right? So what's the distance from here to here, guys? It's simple as x2 minus x1, right? This length minus this length will give us the b length that we want. Okay, so b, we can say b, instead of just saying b, we can say is x2 minus x1 whole thing squared. So I'm replacing b with x2 minus x1 in our formula. So next, what about the height of this triangle? Okay, so same thing, guys. We know the top, the y coordinate is y1. Okay, we know the bottom, the y coordinate is y2. Okay, so then we can say the distance between this is going to be, so A, it's going to be y1 minus y2, whole thing squared. So I'm replacing A with y1 minus y2. Okay, so it's plus is equal to distance squared. Now, I don't want to know what distance squared is. I want to know what just distance is. So I'm going to square root the whole thing, square root both sides. So I'm going to square root this side, and I'm going to square root this side. Okay, so what's that going to happen? Well, this is going to turn into d squared square root is just d is equal to square root of, this is our formula, guys, y1 minus y2 squared plus x2 minus x1 squared. That's it. That's our formula. Very simple. Okay, so you guys notice something weird here. We have y1 first and then y2 second, x2 first and x1 second. It doesn't matter if you switch them around. So for example, this could be x1 and minus x2 just as easily. It doesn't really matter for this formula. Okay, so basically, I'm going to write down the proper formula for you guys. So the equation going to be is distance is square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Okay, this literally, guys, it comes from Pythagoras theorem, a squared plus b squared c squared. That's where this equation comes from. Okay, so again, let's apply this equation in a question. Okay, again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to label our coordinates x1 y1, x2 y2. Okay, and it's as simple as plugging these numbers into the formula. So distance is equal to square root of, so we'll do y2 minus y1 squared, or we'll do x2 minus x1 first because I said that first. So x2 is negative 3 minus 4 whole thing squared. So x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 is 6 minus 7 whole thing squared. Okay, so from here, just simplifying, that's going to be square root of negative 3 minus 7 is negative, minus 4 is negative 7 squared, plus 6 minus 1 is negative 1 squared. So let's keep going. Square root of negative 7 squared is 49, negative 1 squared is 1. So pretty much what you're left with is square root of 50. Okay, and this is a set, we can simplify the sets. Okay, so we can write this as pretty much 5 root 2. Okay, if you don't know how we did that, I'll quickly explain. So we can write square root 50 as 25 multiplied by 2, which is going to be root 25 multiplied by root 2, and root 25 is 5, so you have 5 times root 2, 5 root 2. Okay, if you need more help on sets, guys, I'll upload a lesson in the future about sets. Okay, so make sure you check that out. Okay, so that's distance applied. We're going to do a similar, another question just to show you. It's the same thing. Okay, we'll do one more question. So distance, square root of, again, I'll label for you guys. We have x1, y1, x2, y2. Okay, it's going to be x2 minus x1 squared, so negative 6 minus 5 squared, plus 3 minus 3 squared. Okay, 3 minus 3, that's a bit weird. Okay, we'll see what happens though. So d is equal to square root of negative 6 minus 5 is negative 11 squared, plus 3 minus 3 is 0. 0 squared, so it's gone. It's fine, that's okay, it can happen. So d is going to be, what, 11 squared is 121, okay? And then square root of 121 is 11. So distance is 11, simple as that. Okay, let's keep going. So again, now we have a variable we need to solve for. So the question is giving us distance this time. And now we have to solve for a. Okay, so a is a variable we need to solve for. So let's do it, okay? We're going to do the same thing we did with midpoint. We're going to ignore that this distance exists and just find the distance between these two formulas, okay? So distance is going to be square root of x2, which is 2, minus x1, which is 3 squared, plus y2, which is a, so a minus y1, which is 4 squared. Okay, so let's try simplify this as much as we can. So distance is equal to square root of 2 minus 3 is a negative 1 squared. And I'm just going to leave it like that. I'm not going to expand it or anything. Okay, so we'll say a minus 4 squared. Okay, so pretty much distance is equal to square root of 1 plus a minus 4 squared. Okay, now I should stop saying okay so much. I keep saying okay like 200 different times. I'm sure it's getting annoying. So I'll try to say it less, okay? I just said okay. Oh my god. Okay. Last time, I promise. Distance is equal to, the question is saying square root of 10. This distance we found from the equation should be equal to the same thing as root of 10. So what we should do, we have to get rid of the square roots, right? So how do you get rid of square roots? Well, we need to square both sides. So I'm going to take this side, square it, and this side, square it. So what that does is pretty much gets rid of the square root. So all you're left with is 1 plus a minus 4 squared is equal to 10. From here, just keep solving. So we'll subtract 1 from both sides. So a minus 4 squared is equal to 9. So now you have to get rid of the square. How do you get rid of the square? Well, you need to do the opposite of what we did up here pretty much. So now you need to square root both sides. So we'll square root this side and square root this side. Okay. Oh, that's the last time I'll say okay, I promise. So if you square root a minus 4 squared, you're going to have a minus 4 is equal to square root of 9, guys. What is square root of 9? Okay, this is an interesting topic I want to talk to you guys about real quick. Okay, let's say I have square root of 16, for example. Now, there's two, let's have this equation actually. Let's say I have x squared is equal to 16. Okay, so if we square root both sides, x is equal to square root of 16. We know that. So the square root of 16 is obviously 4. Okay, but just quickly tell me, guys, what if I make sub x equals negative 4 in there? So if I sub negative 4 in there, negative 4 squared, what's negative 4 squared? It's still positive 16. So that means that x equals negative 4 is still a solution. But if you do it this way, we're kind of ignoring half the solution, right? So how we solve this problem is every time you square root, there's a rule. So make sure you write it down. Every time you take a square to the other side by square rooting, what we're going to do is write a plus or minus. Okay, so x is equal to plus or minus 4. Okay, so what does that mean? If it's a plus or minus, then we take either x is equal to positive 4 or x is equal to negative 4. Okay, it's to get around this issue that there are two solutions to this question. Okay, so let me explain what I mean in terms of what we're doing. So make sure you write this down. So in terms of what we're doing, when we square root both sides, what we have to do is you have to do plus or minus 9, right? Because what does this mean? But root square root of 9 is 3. So plus or minus 3. So this pretty much means that 3 squared is equal to 9 and negative 3 squared is equal to 9. So there's two solutions. That's what the plus and minus captures. Okay, I hope you understand. I'll show you more. I will do more examples, obviously. So from here, we just need to solve. So don't get too confused about the plus or minus. So you still add 4 to both sides. So this side plus 4 and this side plus 4. So you're going to have a is equal to plus or minus 3 plus 4. This is a bit weird. How do you solve this? I told you from here you can have two different options. Two options here, here. First, we'll take the negative part of the plus or minus. So a is equal to negative 3 plus 4. Or we'll take the positive part of the plus or minus, so the plus. So a is equal to positive 3 plus 4. Okay, so from here, just simplify. A is equal to 1, negative 3 plus 4, or a is equal to 7. Simple as that, guys. Okay. I don't think I'm going to ever kick this okay habit. I'm going to keep saying okay like 200 different times. So I hope you guys get used to it. It's not happening. I just gave up. Okay. I hope you understand this question. Okay. Now it's your turn as usual. Okay. These are the questions. Find the answers. Go for it. Pause the video. Alright. These are the answers to the questions. So to answer to question 1, A is going to be root 17. 1B is root 34. Okay. I will do both of these next few questions for you. The question 2. So we'll do the first one. I'll talk about how we got 1 and 5. Okay, so let me just copy this down here. All right, we'll do this question. So as usual, we start off by finding the distance equation. So distance, remember, is equal to square root of x2 minus x1. So 3 minus a, x2, x1 squared plus y2, y1. 8, 5. 8 minus 5 squared. Okay, so we'll simplify this as much as we can. Square root of 3 minus a squared plus 3 squared. A minus 5 is 3. So simplify, almost done. We'll leave that inside the bracket. So it'll be 3 minus a squared plus 9. Okay, we pretty much simplified everything. So now we just need to make this equal to what the question said the distance is equal to, which is equal to root 13. So this distance should be equal to root 13. So the first step is the same. We need to square both sides. Square this side. Okay. So now what are you left with is 3 minus a squared plus 9 is equal to 13. All right. Simplify from here by taking 9 to the other side. You'll have 3 minus a squared is equal to 4. Now, we need to get rid of the square. So how do you get rid of the square? Is you take it to the other side by square rooting, or you can think of it as square rooting both sides. But if you take a square to the other side, guys, what do you have to do? You have to do a plus or minus. All right. So you have 3 minus a on the left side is equal to plus or minus, well, what's square root of 4? Plus or minus 2. Square root of 4 is 2. All right. So let's keep going. So you have to take 3 to the other side. It'll be negative a is equal to plus or minus 2 minus 3, because it's plus 3 here, to take the other side and subtract. Now, how do you get rid of the negative sign? Well, what we've been doing thus far is taking the left side, multiply by negative 1, take the right side, multiply by negative 1. All right, so left side's fairly simple. You're left with a. All right, and the negative is you need to expand the negative. Well, we know that negative 3 times negative 1 is positive 3. That's fairly simple. But what the hell is plus or minus times negative 1, right? Because normally you flip the sign. So, well, to that, my answer is you don't need to do anything. You can just write it as plus or minus 2. All right? So, pretty much what I'm trying to say is negative does not affect a plus or minus. All right, so where do you go from here? Well, we have two solutions. A is equal to the positive part of the plus or minus, so plus 2, plus 3, or A is equal to the negative part of it, so negative 2 plus 3. So A is equal to 5, A is equal to 1. So two solutions, guys. I hope you understand that one. I'll do the next one as well. I'll do part B, so I'll show you how we got 1 and 9, because these are a little confusing. If you got the answer, you can stop watching. We're pretty much done. It's the last thing for this lesson. But if you still need help, feel free to stay back and I'll explain. So same, we just start off the same way. D is equal to square root of y2 x2 minus x1, which is a negative 3 minus, so minus negative 7 this time, right? Minus minus, because you're subtracting two negative numbers. So negative 3 x2, so pretty much x2, what we did x2 minus x1 there. So it's negative 3 minus 7 squared, plus y2 minus y1, so 4 minus a squared. So we need to start simplifying this. So what is negative 3 minus 7 is pretty much like this. Negative 3 plus 7, because minus minus is plus, which is equal to 4. So we have 4 squared plus 4 minus a squared. All right, so we know that 4 squared is equal to 16. So we can say D is equal to square root of 16 plus 4 minus a squared. So now we've simplified that as much as possible. So now we can worry about what the question says. This is equal to root 41. So same thing, what we did in the previous question, square both sides. You're left with 16 plus 4 minus a squared is equal to 41. So now you take 16 to the other side by subtracting. 4 minus a squared is equal to 25. All right, happy so far? Hope you understand. Again, you always have the option to go back and rewind and watch it again if you don't really understand something. But let's move on. So now we have to get rid of the square by square rooting both sides. And remember, every time you take a square to the other side, what do you have to do? Plus or minus. Every time, guys. Every time you try to take a square to the other side by square rooting, plus minus. Okay, because you're missing on half the solution if you don't do that. You're missing out on the negative part of it if you don't do plus minus. So it's going to be 4 minus a is equal to 25. So, sorry, not 25. Square root of 25 is 5. So plus or minus 5. Now you take 4 to the other side by subtracting. So negative a is equal to plus or minus 5 minus 4. And you're left with, so times both sides by negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 to take a negative to the other side. So you're left with finally a is equal to, so expand. Like I said in the previous question, it doesn't affect the plus or minus, negative 1. So you're still plus or minus 5. And then negative 4 times negative 1 is plus 4. Again, you have two solutions. A is equal to plus 5 plus 4, so the positive version, and A is equal to minus 5 plus 4. Okay, so this is the only sign that changes. One is plus, one is minus. So you're left with A is 9, A is 1. Those are the answers. Okay, that's it, guys. We're done for this lesson. I hope you understood that one. Again, that's it. I'll see you soon.